Welcome to the Hunting Beast Report, a live video podcast with Dan Infalt and host Jeremy Gillespie.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Stealth Outdoors. The off-season's a great time to rehab your gear, so head on over to Stealth Outdoors at www.stealthoutdoors.com to pick up some climbing stick wraps, cam buckle covers, platform cable wraps, or stealth strip rolls for all of your miscellaneous silencing needs. Today's show is also made possible by Hunting Beast Gear, innovators in mobile hunting gear and the designers of the Beast Sticks and Beast Stand. Check out the latest products at www.huntingbeastgear.com. And now, on to the podcast. All right, we're live. Today we're joined by not only one, but two special guests. We got Mario Trafficante from the Hunting Beast and Hunting Beast Gear. And then we got Mr. Bill Thompson of Spartan Forge. How's everybody doing tonight?
Good. How are you guys?
Hey, everybody.
Doing good.
Good. So, Bill, for people that aren't already familiar with you, I'm seeing your name myself more and more on social media. Give us a little bit of background of who you are, where you grew up, how you got started hunting, and maybe how you got where you're at now.
I grew up in northeastern North Dakota, right on the Canadian border. I joined the military when I was 17, and I retired 2 years ago. While I was in the military, I worked in like what you would call like the green military, and then I also, or like regular military guy. Then I worked in the special operations community for the last 11 years or so, and most of that time was spent doing support to like military operations. Deployed many times to Iraq, Afghanistan, many times to Horn of Africa, Northern Africa, Southern Philippines, and did that for like the remainder of my career. And then towards the end, I started getting into work in artificial intelligence, and I always was doing stuff in the military with computers. And as I was nearing retirement, I started working on collared deer study data and doing stuff for other universities and building models and that type of thing, and decided that there was maybe something there for the hunting community. So started doing that in like 2017, retired from the military, like I said, 2 years ago. And I've been running Spartan Forge ever since. Spartan Forge, for those who haven't heard of it, is I'd call it a planning application. I think there's mapping, and I think that's like the first thing people think about. But I think anybody who's obviously listened to what you guys do or listen to everyone else, like it's a lot more than maps, and we do a lot more than maps. And I'll actually demo some of that today, and the first time in a podcast, like some other stuff that we've done. So excited to talk to you all. And I've been a big fan of the Hunting Beast and everything that you guys do since I was getting my teeth kicked in Western Maryland almost 10 years ago.
Bill, what state, where do you call home these days?
Right now I'm in Virginia. I just moved from West Virginia. My wife works for the FBI, unfortunately, and she got moved out here to Quantico. I don't choose who she works for, but we got moved out to here, Quantico, south of DC. So we've been living here since September, and good hunting down here too. And so, that's where I'm at now.
Well, before we get into the app, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that quite a bit, I'm just curious to know your times before you joined the military, or maybe during the military too. What was hunting like in North Dakota, and kind of what were your roots, and the traditions that got you into hunting, and how you ended up making an app? Yeah,
so I kind of did cultural hunting growing up in North Dakota. It's just kind of like rifle season, everybody hunts, and it was like the only time you could get out of football. So, I did the openers and that type of thing, and kind of what you would call very casual hunting. And then while I was in the military back on deployment one time, my brother-in-law was a big bow hunter, always was, and kind of got me into it there. And I think I forget the ages now. I think I was maybe 23 or 24, maybe 25. I can't remember, to be honest with you. But I got into it there, and kind of both of my first hunting experiences were kind of odd in that the first time I rifle hunted, I was successful killing a buck, which was a total fluke and a whole nother story. And then the first time I was bow hunting, I actually had like 3 bucks show up in front of me. and no clue what I was doing, no idea what was going on, no idea what I was looking at. But I did get addicted right there, and was kind of semi-successful very early on in North Dakota because the land that I had access to was just big, wide open farming agricultural area that had never been hunted before, and the deer there were just super tame, and it was super easy. And then like I said before, I moved out to Western Maryland, and being military, like when I hunted at home, I was semi-successful, but then after the global war and that stuff started happening, my time back in North Dakota was limited, so I started hunting out in Western Maryland. I was stationed at Fort Meade at the time, and that was like 15,000 acres of like essentially open public. Think of like if you've hunted Pennsylvania, just like the Adirondacks or the Allegheny or any of those places, just big, wide open mountain country. And I really got my teeth kicked in there for about 3 years, like hardly saw deer, just didn't know what I was doing wrong, kind of using all of the, what you would call, I don't know how to say it. Like, I guess if you read hunting magazines, set up over a scrape, go near agriculture, go near a field. I did like that kind of thing and just got my teeth kicked in. And, that's when I started getting into like DIY hunting and buying books and that type of thing.
Go ahead, Dan.
No, I just said mainstream tactics.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Like watching the shows, this would have been like 2010 when I first like really got serious. And so, watching like, the famous personalities on TV and kind of trying to do what they were doing. And it just was not successful in the least, especially where I was hunting, because it was heavy pressure. So I actually picked up like a book that I keep right here that I'm sure everyone's seen like a million times, and started getting into this type of thing. And then, got onto your guys' content and other people. And then also just kind of surrounded myself with people who are successful on public land. And of course, I'm sure everyone has this same story, but, then learned that it kind of goes like this for everything for me in life. When I try to pursue something, I think I have an idea of how it works. And then when I actually figured out, it's like 180 degrees out of phase with what I thought I was supposed to be doing. So, that was, I harvested my first big public Maryland buck in like 2012. And then I was really addicted, and I've never looked back since. Like, all I do is think about deer and scouting, and it's my life. Well, it was until I started this company.
Yeah, I imagine that's your life. Now, Mario, before we move on too far, you have any questions for Bill?
Yeah, I want to know the story behind that globe that's sitting behind you.
This is my wife got me this. It's got whiskey inside of it, and it is really like.
So you can travel anywhere when you open the globe and have a little whiskey. Then
yeah. Well, it takes more than you probably want to drink on a weeknight, but yeah, you can get anywhere.
That's the more elaborate flask that I've ever seen, I think.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool. I think I saw one in a movie or something and told my wife I wanted one. And my wife always complains that she can never get me anything for gifts, because I'm one of those guys where if I actually say I want something, I'll just save up my money and go buy it. So I'm really difficult to buy presents for. So I think she saw me say like I liked that in a movie or something, and then she picked it up for me. So
pretty sweet.
That's cool. And Bill, you touched on it in your initial answer, but I'd be more curious to know, as you were getting closer to retirement and the stuff that you were doing in the military, how that lent itself to starting Spartan Forge. And we actually we have mutual friends, so I've met Bo Martonic in person a couple times, and I actually live about an hour away from where his brother Kurt used to live in Montana. So
nice.
Yeah, I'm just west of Billings, and Kurt was living in Big Timber, so I know those guys, not super well, but well enough. And
Kurt is actually our lead researcher. I don't know if you knew that or not.
I did not know that.
For Spartan Forge, yeah. So all of the research, like whenever we have like if you look inside of the Intel tab of the app, there's like what kind of food do deer eat? What's the buck to doe ratio for your state? That type of stuff, along with public hunting grounds and research. So yeah, Kurt does that, and then Bo obviously is, I don't like the word pro staff, but brand ambassador, good hunter that we want representing our product, I think is a little mouthful, but but I already forgot your question. Your initial question was what again?
How what you were doing in the military kind of lent itself to creating the app. And what I was talking about, Bo and Kurt, is I've watched some of Bo's podcasts with you, and you talked about maybe your initial plan was kind of to join forces, perhaps, and that didn't work out. And I'd like to hear that story for this audience.
Sure, yeah. So I mean, while I was in the military, I'm not I should be clear here. People hear SOCOM or Special Operations Command. I was the guy with glasses with tape around the middle and, a pocket protector. I was not a door kicker. I very rarely came under fire or, if I was in a gunfight, we were having a bad day. So I am not I was in special forces units, but I was a military intelligence guy for the special forces units. So you could think about it this way. Like I wasn't James Bond. I was Q. I was the nerd that, stayed back in the lab or, after all the bad guys were dead, I would go in and take all the computers and do the forensics exploitation on the computers, or I was tracking bad guys and building military intelligence pictures. So really what that means is I was solving targeting problems. Hunters and the military have targeting issues. They have, in the military, we called it a JPEL list, but like our joint prioritized effects list, like who do we want to kill this year? And hunters kind of have the same thing. And so my job was to isolate the variables and kind of come up with a comprehensive picture that enabled battlefield commanders to do that. So it made sense to me when I was thinking, well, first, when I was getting ready to retire from the military, I was really afraid. I didn't know what I was going to do or be able to do that was going to give me the same kind of sense of purpose that the military gave me. And as I started moving down the road to Spartan Forge, I was like, oh, I've kind of found it, because the only thing I love as much as being a soldier is being a hunter. And so as I was getting ready to retire, probably 2 years before I was getting ready to retire, I had built some of the first, artificial intelligence models, which really AI, for anybody who's listening, it's a whole another podcast, but it's just pattern recognition. And it's not, the moniker AI isn't a good term actually, because there's nothing, it's artificial intelligence, but it's not anywhere near as bad as everyone thinks it is. Not bad, but as advanced as everyone thinks it is. But so I was building artificial intelligence models for the military and partnering with organizations to build ones that enabled, the prosecuting the global war on terrorism. And it occurred to me that the way that I was doing it lent itself to hunting. So I started, the first thing I did, and it's a very long story, but I'll keep it under 2 minutes, was I built my own sensor network for a property out in North Dakota that I had access to. So what I did was I took these things called accelerometers, which detect vibration. And then I before there were like wireless trail cameras, I essentially, and Mario would know what I'm talking about here, but I wired up a VHF network on my mother's property. And then I basically soldered cameras together and created a wireless mesh network on my mother's property with a bunch of cameras and accelerometers and weather vanes. So what I do is with these weather vanes was every time a deer, so I took these accelerometers, these vibration detection systems, and I molded them into a fake rock, and then I placed them near scrapes. And then those detected vibrations in the ground. And then I made a ton of those, like every scrape where I knew there were like primary scrapes, every place where I knew there were secondary scrapes, I got hit every year. Any place I could stick one of those, I did. And then on top of that, I put a bunch of wireless cameras out there. And my background in the military was in electrical engineering, so this was kind of up my alley. And then what I did was I took these weather vanes that you can just order, like if you go on Adafruit, they put them together for you. And I just ordered these weather systems, and I put together, and every time a deer pawed a scrape or hit a big rub, which I also had accelerometers on those rubs, it would register it and it would log the weather that was being detected on the weather vanes. And then every time a camera was taken, it would transmit it back. And it was all in like an Amazon Web instance, like an AWS instance. And what I did with that data was I let it aggregate for like 2 years. And then I started trying to draw conclusions on when deer were scraping more, when they were rubbing more, when they were, buck were appearing near doe bedding often or showing their faces during daylight hours more often. and lined that up with the actual weather sensors that I had on the property. I went to an academic at Auburn. His name is Steve Ditchkoff. There's some podcasts about this that we did together. But essentially, I went to him and said, hey, I've got all this data that I've been aggregating. I think there's something here. There's a little bit of predictive analysis. There wasn't a ton, but there were some predictions about when a machine could make a guess on when a buck might start to rut or when does were coming into estrus. And I did all kinds of stuff. I was measuring does. I was measuring fetuses from harvested does and putting all of these different types of information, this different types of data. And then I showed that to them. And then the question, or what we came up with at Auburn essentially was, why don't we just use the collar GPS data? Because one of the things that I noticed was I knew bucks were, I had some areas where there are primary scrapes where I'd set up like 2 or 3 of these cameras. One of these areas of my mother's property is just a place with cedars everywhere. And there's always this massive, like, truck-sized scrape that gets opened up every year at the same time. And I had 3 or 4 different cameras in that area. And I noticed bucks were constantly missing that scrape, but they were walking by it. So that told me that even though the bucks weren't going to be on that camera, that I had holes in my data where the bucks were still tending to the scrape, but they weren't. If you had just one camera on that scrape, you would be thinking that they weren't there when in fact they were. So we decided to use GPS data to train these models because the GPS collar is always on the deer. And we got a super accurate GPS collared deer data artificial intelligence that just predicted if they were going to be in their core area, in a transition area, or their, we say full range, but you can think about that as you're driving by a field where you never see deer and there's like 30 deer in the field. The machine would call that a full range day. So that's a long story, but essentially we got working models. And then I made some introductions by people in the hunting space. One of them was a friend of mine who died a few years ago named Charles Alsheimer, who was like a prolific outdoor deer photographer I met him at my church at a church function. So he came and spoke at my church and I showed him some stuff that I was doing and he got interested in it. And he introduced me to some people in the industry that I'll leave unnamed. And then they introduced me to Moultrie, where it was the first company that I went to. And brief them up. And it's pretty funny because all the stuff that they're coming out now in the last year is almost an exact replica of what I demoed to them like 5 years ago. When you look at the user interface for what Moultrie has right now, I could do it during this call. I can bring up the Microsoft PowerPoint from the stuff that I built almost 5 or 6 years ago with the data on it. Then I went out there and showed them. And there is a stark, they're extremely similar to the UI that I built there, which was a UI that I'd built while I was in the military for computer stuff. Doesn't matter. Long story short, I went to them and then I ended up getting an introduction to another mapping company that I'll leave unnamed for now, but people probably can figure it out, which was quite large. They offered me a pretty good contract, but they wanted to lock me up for like 10 years. They wanted me to not be able to communicate with anybody else in the industry. I was just going to work with them. They were not going to pay me, nearly what the work was worth. And that's not to say I still was going to do the deal. But when they said I couldn't work with anyone for like 10 years, I was like, well, this is onerous. I can't, enter into a contract where I can't do anything for like 10 years. And then I started looking into who were the investors in these companies and where they got their money and then where their money was being spent. And that was when I knew I just wasn't going to work with any of them. I'm a pretty disagreeable person by temperament. And I just decided that the hard part wasn't the mapping stuff. The hard part was the machine learning and all of the other peripheral stuff, some of which I'll demonstrate tonight that I've never shown anyone except for maybe at a show last weekend. But the peripheral stuff was the difficult part, not the mapping. So I decided I would do the mapping for the first couple of years, which is what we've been doing. And now we've finally gotten the product, with the exception of some like public land, vector data, and a couple of other things. The app's pretty much where I wanted it from a mapping perspective. And now we're going to start putting out all of these features that I think really help hunting and hunters in a more of an all-inclusive way. Instead of just focusing on the maps, we're going to be focusing on a lot of other things, learning being chief among them, and then kind of putting it in the context of a hunting application. And not unlike what you guys have been doing for the past, 10 years or so, or however long. I'm not sure exactly how many years you've been doing it. I apologize for that. But regardless, that's kind of where I got here today. So I'm hoping that kind of answers the mail on the question that you had.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's super helpful to have the origin story to just give it some context for, why you started developing an app, what the app's about. And I like how you describe it as a planning app rather than a mapping app. And you can, I talked to Dan offline when we talked about doing this podcast, and I said, when your first beta came out, I'm always curious. I like to check things out. So I checked it out and I was like, yeah, there's some potential there, but it wasn't for me at that time. And then Dan's like, hey, you gotta, get up to speed on this and check it out. And I was shocked to be honest. So one of the things that I love, and I'm sure we'll demo, is LIDAR. So to have an app that's got LIDAR in it, the UAV imagery, there's tons of stuff, and I'm sure we're going to go over it, but it's come a very long way since the beta phase. And if that's the arc of progress or improvement, I'm real excited to see what's going to be going on coming.
I really appreciate that. That's a pretty common narrative that I get from people that, I knew when we released it, it was like a 30% solution or 25% solution, but I had to get it out there because I needed user input, because I don't know all the answers. In fact, I know very little of the answers, but hunters being the disagreeable lot that we are, I knew there would be no shortage of input from people. And then I would gather that input and then talk to people like yourselves, like Mario, Mario and I have been talking, I think, for probably over a year. And other people who are just like, I like this, I don't like this. And then getting the user interface and the user experience down. And so I would just tell people that kind of feel the same way that you do right now, that we're just getting started. And I mean that, like, from a feature standpoint, we've just gotten to the point where I feel like it's a reputable mapping app, and now it's going to turn into the planning app. And this is truly where I'm going to hit my strides and start putting out stuff that I think people aren't even thinking about. I'm not trying to be cocky or anything like that. I'm just saying, I'm trying to make this thing. I as a hunter, when I was using other apps, had to use 7 or 8 apps to gather my data. I would go to I would go look for bathymetry data to look at water flow. I would look at pilot. I would go on websites that gave pilots weather, and I'd look at historical weather in area. I would go to 3 or 4 different mapping websites. I would go to all of these places. And if I wanted to do it right, I had to pay for all of them, and I had to learn all of them, and it was cumbersome. So I'm kind of trying to take all of these lessons learned and centralize them away, and then also keep my team very small. Like, I could have raised a lot of venture capital in the beginning, and I decided to do friends and family and just bootstrap it in the beginning, because this 2-year period I could learn instead of just raising a bunch of money and building something that, was kind of like this big, giant, ugly mess. I wanted to do it slowly and do it right. So I'm pretty proud of where it is right now, and it's really only going to get better.
Yeah. Mario, any questions before we get on to demo and some of the features?
No, I would just agree with that. I started getting into using the app a lot more this year, and the big thing for me was Bill will probably get into this, but the intel side of things. So when he talked about collecting all that data when you're going out to hunt an area, and especially when you're planning out where you're going to hunt for the week, when you are strapped for time, one of the things is that intel page, like the key things that I pick up on is the weather, the moon phase, the moon overhead, the moon underfoot, and then correlating that to what range these deer are moving in. And it was actually pretty cool because you could start, I didn't have to go and plan that out as far as, weather.com or looking at different historical weather predictions, like you said. I had a variety of spots, and I'd also journal that stuff. So I'd go back and look at my journals from previous years. The nice thing with Spartan Forge app is it's just all at your fingertips by just simply flipping the page. And for some of my friends that were hunting that actually didn't use the app, they would often ask me, like, what are the predictions today for movement, or where is the range going to be for this, And I'm like, why don't you just buy the app, but it was cool to actually see that stuff play out in reality, especially as you move through the different phases of the season, to see how the movement in the woods actually correlated to the app. And if you're a moon phase guy, I have a friend that keeps detailed records of that, and he always shares his moon phase map with me every year. It's like a handwritten one that he gives me, and it was fun looking at his handwritten map and then looking at what the app was doing during the year, and seeing that. So I really like the combination of the mapping and the intel. I think there's a good mix there, and it's only going to get better. And
Yeah,
Bill and I, like,
Mario
we
has
kind of
kind of
nerded
seen.
out.
Oh,
We
sorry.
kind
Go
of
ahead.
nerded out about the whole data side of this, because I feel like all hunters, regardless of who you are, we're data collectors. Like the really good ones, when I talk to them, you know,
Mhm.
they are collecting data constantly about their environment. And I think this app has a lot of that data at your fingertips that you can utilize. And so it's
Before we
Yeah.
went on today, I
Sorry. Go
was
ahead, Ben.
sorry. Before we went on, Mario was talking about the moon phase portion of the app, and I told him, just in conversation, on my way home from work today, something was going on because there was just deer everywhere. I says, check on the app and see what the moon phase was, and it was exactly right at the time it peaked when I was driving home from work, and there was deer at 3 in the afternoon everywhere when I came home.
yeah, 3:30 moon overhead in our location. Um, and yeah, there was a lot of deer out at that time. But that's just one of those little nuggets where typically it's something on moon phase that you keep in your back pocket. Because that can make a difference. Like if you're hunting after work, for us, just a tactic, if I see that moon phase, I know that I got to get out of work a little bit earlier so I can get out into position earlier, because there's going to be deer moving and there might be a mature animal moving earlier. So it's one of those little nuggets that you have at your fingertip that allow you to make a change really quickly, and how you're going to set up and go in.
Then, Bill, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. If you want to share and demo some of the features, I've familiarized myself with the app pretty good over the last several weeks. I'm sure you're going to cover most of it, but if you don't, I've got some things that I'd like you to look at specifically, but we'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Yeah, so I'll do the desktop app here. There's a whole mobile app that we could do a whole show on. There's actually more features in the mobile app. The desktop app always kind of catches up to the mobile application because most users are on their phone most often. And I think the last thing I want to say, I just wanted to kind of, to put a point on what Dan and what Mario were saying there just a moment ago. I built this application for people with limited time. Like I, as a military guy, or my brother who's an electrician, for the first 15 years of my brother-in-law's career, he had no vacation, like none. He didn't ever get vacation. He worked at the state flour mill in North Dakota. And for the first 15 years that he was there, he got maybe 3 days off a year. And when he wanted to get into work early so he could leave early, I was thinking about him. I was thinking about my brother who's an electrician. How do I help them optimize their time? And none of what I've done with this application, and I feel like I especially in this company, I feel like I need to say it. None of it is going to replace scouting. None of this is going. All I'm trying to do is make your scouting more precise, and so that you're not wasting that time away from work or away from your wife or away from your husband or whomever or your kids, so that you can just zero in, go out there, burn the boot leather in the most efficient way possible, draw your conclusions, then make your decision on how you want to hunt. So I feel like that's important. So what I'll do here is I'll share my screen, and I won't be able to see you guys while I'm sharing. I noticed that before. So please just interrupt me if there's something. What I'm going to do is just kind of go through some of the features and kind of talk about how I use them or what I'm doing. And then towards the end, I'll demo this new feature that we're coming out here with very soon. And feel free to interrupt me or tell me to shut up at any time.
Bill, if we can't see you, if we come back on screen, is that globe going to be open?
No, I want to be able to step away. So on top of that, I want to be cogent here while I'm demoing to you guys. I don't want to. Can you guys see the screen here? Look, that's all my hunting spots. So there you guys go.
Yeah, and we can still see you, Bill, even though you can't see us. So.
Oh, you can. Okay, great, awesome.
But
So
yes, we can see your screen as well.
Yeah. So this is some of these are my hunting spots. Some of these are not. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I don't care. There's a lot here. So I'll start with saying, just like in the mobile app, we have different mapping layers that people can load and look in just from the satellite level. And all of these are 1 to 3 meter, which is consistent with what you'll see inside of a hunt stand or a hunt wise or an Onyx or a deer cast, 1 meter imagery. Where we kind of differentiate from there is on top of that, we have what we call this UAV imagery that you brought up before. And the UAV imagery is between 5 and 15 centimeters of resolution. And the way that I can kind of make that make sense right away is if you are running like 1 meter imagery, if somebody were to place like 2 crossed baseball bats on the ground, you should be able to see that on the imagery. However, if what we have here, this is 5 centimeter imagery right here. So what this basically means is if I were to place a baseball bat on the ground, a baseball on the ground, like in this yard, you should be able to see that baseball. And that's what 5 centimeter means. And 15 centimeter would just mean a football, or roughly a football's a little larger than that, but that's what you're getting. This actually doesn't look great in this area, even though it's better than anything that's out there. I'll try to go to something closer to like some of my spots here. But like here, this is that UAV imagery. And then what I can do is right now for about half the US, you can go back in time and you can look at how imagery has changed over time. But soon you'll be able to do it for all of the US, but it's going to be that 1 meter imagery. So we are finishing up stitching together historical imagery for all of the US at the 1 meter resolution.
Real
Again,
quick, Bill, that was something I noticed in the app, and I know it's a feature a lot of people use. So I want to interrupt you. There's an option within the app to scroll through dates, right? So you kind of like you would on a Google Earth to get.
That's what I'm doing here. Yep.
Yep. Different time views. Yep.
Yep. So super useful. I mean, obviously you don't want to do it with houses. I was just trying to show you how it changes over time. And you can tell where the UAV coverage is because it's got this different like color to it. So it's not everywhere, but I mean, where I'm at, there's a lot of it. As you move west, you go from like here, there's like 70 or 80% coverage. As you go west, it gets down to like 30 to 40% coverage. We are increasing that, but it's not something where you can just buy it for all of the US at one time because it's a very expensive resource. Like covering all of the US would be something like $30 or $40 million. So we have to do it. We do it by population centers, and we do it and we pay for additional stuff based on where our users are. But this imagery is super helpful because you can go back in time and you can look at how things have changed, but you can also see it at different times of the year. So you can go through here, and when you get to you can go through the spring, you can go through the summer, you can go through the fall, and you can look at like where are the maple trees, where are the cedar trees, where are the trees that are holding vegetation and it would provide cover throughout the year, or where is the when it's leaf off, like you can really see to the ground. One of the things we're doing right now is you're actually going to be able to see this in the summer. All of this UAV imagery we're building so you can do it bird's eye as well. So you're going to be able to do things like measure trees, and you're going to be able to do things like view it from the side. So it's not 3D and flat. It'll actually be 3D with breadth. So when I click this into 3D, it's still flat. But when we click this into 3D and then you turn on the bird's eye, these trees will all have height, and you'll be able to zoom in and actually measure the trees, and you'll be able to see under the trees. So we're really excited about that. It's a lot of processing power and a lot of money that goes into that, but it is an important feature that's pretty awesome. So that's the mapping, and then from there we go to topo, which is just kind of your conventional topo, that you would expect to see anywhere else. The difference here is that we can toggle from 25-foot contour lines. I'm going to try to go into a place. 20-foot contour lines and 10-foot contour lines, and what we can get from that. 1 second, please. Sorry.
Oh, no problem.
What we can get from that is sometimes you want to clutter the map and you really want to look deeply and try to see as much as you can from like a topo standpoint. I also should note that I'm on my integration environment right now, which means kind of nothing to everybody. But what this means is there are features on here that are not offered in the app. So sometimes it acts kind of buggy. I assure you that the topo lines aren't buggy whenever it comes to the production application. It's just, this is a testing version, which has stuff here that I'm going to show you guys later. But then you can go to 10 foot and get even higher resolution here. And then what you can do with that is you can go click that into 3D mode and look at it in 3D mode, and then get a good understanding of what the topo actually means. And you can see now all of those 10-foot lines are in there. Out east, it's not as important. Out west, especially for things like mule deer and elk and whitetail, where you guys are at, the tighter topo lines help a lot. And the other thing you can do here, which you mentioned it before, but it's kind of like my favorite feature, is the LIDAR. So the LIDAR has the high resolution LIDAR has 70% coverage, 73% coverage for the US. We will be at like 85% coverage by the middle of the summer, and we will be at 100% coverage for the high resolution by the end of 2025. So it's a lot of computational resources to put this data together and to display it. And it's also like a guessing game on when we get access to it, or we're actually buying our own drones to do more of this. So what you get here is pretty powerful, because you can overlay, like what I like to do is, you get overlay the timber cuts, you can overlay the slope angle. And what the slope angle does is tells you, and forgive me for people who know this, I'm sure most of you do, especially this crowd, but the darker the colors are, the more slope there is. And the internet's kind of laggy, but it's popping into this 3D mode. But then what this allows you to do is it allows you to see intersecting trails from logging. It allows you to see improvements or things that have been done to property that would otherwise be below the canopy cover. Or if there are trails that are just not denoted on any land resource, you're going to be able to see them in here in a way. And as you guys know, and people know, like if you have an area where multiple logging trails come together, and there's lots of cover, and maybe it's far away from other things, you're going to be dealing with an area where there's more than likely going to be a scrape there or something else. So whenever you pop it into that mode, it's highly valuable. And then from I think what Dan and Mario and yourself might appreciate is you can pop this into a split screen, and you see this reticle here in the middle. I can split this into a split screen. I can turn on the UAV data, and then I can zoom in, and you can see here, like right here on this imagery, you can't see it here, but there's a tiny trail. Can you guys see on the left-hand side here?
Yep.
There's a trail here, and when I turn on trails, it's not denoted in trails because it was probably created by an electrical utility company, or it was created by someone, who knows who, but you can't see it here. Maybe I can switch this and get into even the leaf off. You can't really see it. You see that? But with this LIDAR, it's hugely valuable. And then when you see many of these come together, that's a spot I'm automatically going to go and check out. Again, it's not meant to replace scouting. You shouldn't just see an intersection of these things and assume, oh, I can go hunt there. But what you can do is say, I'm going to go scout there, and at least I'll know if there's activity there or not. And so this to me is awesome, because there's the applications for this are endless, but there's all when you're comparing them like this, there's all kinds of stuff that you can do. And really get to understand the land and what you're dealing with. Like even when I'm really zoomed in here, you still can't really see that, but it is there. And again, to me, hugely helpful. And it's something that, I think most companies, I don't know if anyone's offering this besides us, but we'll also be doing this here on the phone very soon, where you'll be able to split the screen on the phone going up and down. And it's one of the places where the desktop app was in front of the mobile app, just because it's hugely, I think there's more benefit to doing this on the desktop than there is anywhere else. But so from there on here, we have the trails, which you just saw me click on before. We have administrative boundaries, county and city. We have infrastructure, roads, buildings, land, water. We have the different types of public land that you can get into and highlight. We have the private land that you can turn on, and then we have the agriculture layer. So all of this is done in a chip system, which I think is much easier when you look at like HuntStand or Onyx, those other ones. You're searching for layers, and then you're trying to make sure you've paid for that layer for that state, and then B, you go through and you turn that layer on, and you're just clicking through. Whereas I think the chips are much more, I call these chips at the top, are a much more efficient way and quicker way of doing it that allows you to, interact with the application in a quickly. And like in here, like this automatically is grabbing my attention, like right in here. Again, just, to go and look at these things. And then from here, you have some of the tools. You have a measuring tool, which does distance and it has area. You have the chip placement tool. And then you have this thing called Blue Force Tracker. Blue Force Tracker is new for this year. You're only able to see it on the desktop app, but you build the teams and you manipulate them on the mobile application. So I will go to a team here that I know is fake, because some of these are real teams and I don't want to give up all the points here.
We're live. Don't out anybody, Bill.
Yeah. Some of these guys would kill me if I did it. So right here, there's this fake team called Team America. I think I use it for like an advertisement. So what a user does is they draw these vertices, this geometry on the map. They add their buddy's email, and then you start dropping pins. When you drop pins in here, if they turn blue, that means that the pin's been shared. If you attach notes or if you attach photos in there, the pins get auto shared. So if like Dan and Mario are going to go walk like the same like 750 acre swamp, and they're just trying to put some stuff together, instead of texting pins back and forth or sharing copy and pasting lat longs, they just make this Blue Force team and they're automatically dropping pins. And our next update here, which is in a month or so, depending on how the testing goes, when the user actually, a member of the team, now again, you have to be on the team. This doesn't get shared with everyone. It's just the team members. If the member of the team enters the geometry, you'll be able to see their location real time. And then you'll be able to chat with them concerning team, like every Blue Force geometry will have its own chat as well. So you can chat and exchange information in there about the property. Another place this is useful is if you hunt with kids, like my son's 15. When I send him out to stand, I can see where he is. I can chat with him in the app. I can push him points. I can tell him where I'm seeing things or where I expect to see things. You can draw geometry in here to kind of show them. The other useful thing I do with it is on my tree stands, I will take like a picture of the tree stand, and then soon you're going to be able to denote the direction of the tree stand on here. But then if you're sending somebody into a pre-hung stand, again, like maybe an old timer or a kid, they can see what the actual stand looks like. They can see it in the pin. You can see when they've arrived. And it's good for buying down risk in that regard. But also for doing deer drives, it's hugely valuable for that. Deer drives, you'd want to be in a place where you have access to service. If you don't have service, then everything updates when you get back into service. But we're also going to do integration with Garmin over the next year or two. So, and that's a money thing, but essentially you'll be able to use like a Garmin satellite communicator, and you'll be able to push your location every few minutes. So again, if maybe you don't want your wife gets worried while you're out there, or if you were in an outfit, like one of the things I just did an outfit at a show was I met with all of the outfitters there, and they can build these Blue Force teams on their properties, and then they can see where the guy is that they're guiding. They can see where the people are. They can share pins before they get there. And then early next year, you'll be able to share trail camera photos through the trail camera pin. So if you're setting a guy up and you're like, don't want him to kill a certain buck, or you want him to kill a certain buck or doe or whatever, you can highlight those photos within the pin, and then you can auto share that, and they get an idea of exactly what's in that area. So it's just like a really efficient way of sharing this stuff. So it's something that
quick, Bill, couple follow-up questions, just because I think this is a super cool feature, and I want to make sure, one, I understand it, and two, for the people that are listening. So once these teams are set up, so basically when you say geometry, you can outline any area, right? It could be a property, or it could just be a shape, right? Any polygon.
Yeah, and soon you'll be able to, if the property fits the property ownership data, then you'll just be able to highlight the property and say build a Blue Force team. For now, it's just arbitrary, however you want to draw it, shapes.
And then one of the other things that I wanted to point out, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, this isn't a Blue Force tracker specific, is any waypoint that I create in Spartan Forge, I can connect a picture or notes to that, and those are all shareable, right? So like you're talking about the tree stand. Let's say I go out, I set up the stand, I can take a picture, and then I can write notes for access or whatever. And then when I share that, that'll be available to anyone on the team, correct?
Yep. And then if you're not in a Blue Force team, you can just share a pin like you would texting it, like in a hunt stand or an Onyx or anything else.
And anything connected will share also, like pictures or notes.
Yep.
Okay. Mario, you have any questions right now?
No, I'm good. I like the feature. A little bit worried though. Dan and I are gonna scout a bunch of stuff together, and then he's gonna track me going into these spots and hunting.
Only if you allow him to.
Yeah, only if you allow them to. I mean, also you can
Yeah,
leave the team as well.
Why are you going into that spot where I shot the buck last year? So.
Yeah.
I forgot to turn off my Blue Force tracker. Hang on. No.
Dan, do you have any questions right now?
Yeah, I was in it's a little off a subject, but one of the big things I hear from people that are interested in your app is they feel like they got a huge investment in their app because of all the points they got saved over the years.
Sure.
Now, you have a way of transferring those over?
Yep. So for the apps like HuntStand and OnX that allow you to export your pins, we have a video on our YouTube that covers how to do it. It takes about 3 minutes, but you export all of your pins, and then you just, once they're exported to your desktop, which again, Bo Martonic, who was mentioned earlier, made the video, but it's on our YouTube. You just click this import button and you drag them in here, and then they populate right on your map. The whole process takes 2 or 3 minutes at the most. The other thing is there's some data that Onyx doesn't allow to be transferred, like the shape and the color of the pin. So you'll just have like a bunch of orange default pins on the map whenever you see them, and you'll have to change that. But there'll be like notes and there'll be photos in there. But yeah, you can transfer all of that real quick. And but there are apps like Basemap doesn't allow you. I don't think they do. You can email them usually, and they'll provide you a KML file, and then you can drop that KML file in here. But that relies on them doing it, which can take a while. So it's not that we don't want you guys to be able to transfer them. It's just some companies want you to make it difficult for you to change over by not allowing that. And so, which we understand or whatever, but it's just the way that it is. But yes, you can do that with the larger ones. And we're also going to make it easier to get that data in there later. It's just a time thing, but we're going to make it so you can easily scroll through the pins and add the data back using this side-by feature with another app. So on the right, you'll have your old app. On the left, you'll have your new one, and you'll just slide through each pin together and then quickly be able to change your data.
Yeah, and I think, Bill, just to reiterate, because it's an important point, you won't get the colors or maybe the icon, but you do get the notes and pictures. So, and obviously it's the same lat and longitude coordinates. So the really important stuff transfers over.
Yeah, and I would just add to your notes. I mean, like when I got rid of my Onyx, which is what I used, I had like 2,500 points, but I kept losing points because they were capping me. We don't cap users or the amount of points that they have. And our app, I think one of the first things people generally see with our app is I built this thing to be smooth and for the tiles to load smoothly. And I think that's one of the first things people notice is when they have a ton of pins, it doesn't slow down the application. And when they manipulate the map, it responds really well. And we're also building some of our own mapping stuff that's going to be coming out very soon. If you've ever seen like the show Game of Thrones, I call it like the Game of Thrones map, but it's going to use this LIDAR feature, and it's going to build like really cool looking mountain geometry. I can actually show you a little bit what it's going to look like, kind of an Easter egg here, but I've already loaded some of it over here to the west. And you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like, but there's going to be like animations and stuff on it. It's going to look really cool, but you can see how this looks kind of different from what you were looking at before. It's going to have more of this like cartoony feel to it, but it's going to be a lot more data rich, and it's going to show you a lot more what's going on with the ground. You can just see the detail and the shadowing and the rendering of it. We're using a 3D mesh layer to represent the data, and we're serving up the tiles in a way that makes it really smooth.
Just for my own interest and curiosity, nerd speak here. Are you hosting all this on AWS or?
Yep, everything we have right now is on AWS, which is another problem for me. Just because, one day people are going to decide that they don't like hunters, and then, Jeff Bezos's girlfriend or something is going to get us kicked off of here because we're using this software to kill animals. So I'm dealing with that right now too. I don't know if I'm building my own server architecture that I'm going to be able to host myself so that I can't get kicked off of this stuff. So we are doing that in the future, which I think separates us from other companies that are almost entirely dependent on other. Like right now, we use Mapbox for our map tile generation, but we've built our own map tile server, and soon we'll be using our own map tile server. So that will get rid of Mapbox, which is a good thing because Mapbox is actually a limiting factor for us. And then we're also going to have our own stuff because when I get into this feature later, Cyber Scout, we're going to get sued. Or someone's going to try to sue us, and I'll get into why later. But someone's going to try to shut us down. But so from there, we have our journaling feature. One of the cool things with I'll say it before. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Every hunter that I know that is consistent killer and kills every year, with the exception of maybe one or two people, are consistent journalers, and they journal everything. I don't know if you guys have had Johnny Stewart on the show. If you haven't, y'all should. He's like one of the best deer hunters I've ever met in my life. He's a killer, and he journals everything. He journals the people that come to his house and what they saw. He journals people that he puts in the woods. He journals himself every sit, whether or not he sees deer or what he does. This journal feature allows you to go back and grab historical weather. So if you have trail camera pictures from last year, you can attach them in a journal entry. Then you can put the date in and the time in of that, and it will go grab the weather, and it will put the weather in there automatically. And then it will start making inferences from that, and you'll get reminders about it in about 3 or 4 months. The journal can start feeding you and say, hey, don't forget over here on this hillside, you saw a 3.5-year-old buck that you'd like to kill this year, and the weather conditions are similar to when you saw him last time. So it's a neat way that we've kind of automated journaling. And then from here, we've got the offline maps that you can build and then sync with your mobile application. And then Mario kind of talked about it before, but this is our Intel tab. So like in this area that I'm at, I'm not sure where this is, doesn't matter. We have a transition area prediction, and that just kind of tells you what that means. Then we have a normal pattern prediction, and that tells you what that means. And then we have the sliding temperature and the real feel, along with barometric pressure on the bottom. A lot of people like where you see, like here on this Monday morning, you have a particularly low temperature and a particularly high pressure system. People like that. You have the peak breeding and secondary peak breeding, running moon and harvest moon for every county in the U.S. You've got your hour by hour weather data. And then you have your polar plot here. That is one of the things that, I was using a pilot's website that I paid a lot of money for to get this historical data in the past. And they built these polar plots for you. Well, the polar plots are really useful for me because if I'm scouting this area and I want to understand kind of what the leeward features are, and we're actually coming out with a leeward highlighting tool that will take this data and just highlight the leeward features for you. And that'll be out in about a month or two. But for now, what you can do is say, well, I know in this area, this big spike here on the north tells me that in the last 2 weeks, there's been a north, the origin of the wind has been from the north. Then I can see by these colors and these 6%, 12%, 18%, I can see, 2% of the time it was 8+ miles an hour, 6 to 8 miles an hour for 3 or 4% of the time. But the majority of the time it's between 4 and 6 miles an hour. Now, where that's more important, you can also go last 4 weeks and you can go last 3 months. But what's more useful here is when I'm going to scout an area in the off season, I can go to November and say, all right, it's mostly west, northwest, and western is almost 40% of the wind at this area in November. So now I'm already isolating areas on the map that I don't even need to go look at because they don't set up for that leeward feature, which I don't always see, but I see a lot. So understanding that historical wind, especially when you're going into an area, is just hugely valuable.
Real quick too, I want to interrupt again, Bill, and make a point that you already made, but just to reiterate it. So the wind rose or the polar graph that you're calling it, that's something I was using as well, but I was using that in a desktop solution. I was using a different desktop solution for LIDAR, and I would just want to make sure that everybody knows we're in desktop right now, but all these features and I think with the exception of the side-by-side mapping are all available in the mobile app, correct?
Yeah, and more. Like here, there's not these pictures, but we also have pictures of like all of the natural food that grows in this area that deer eat. We have like buck to doe ratios on the mobile app. We have how many deer were killed last year. Tons of amplifying data to kind of help you understand. That'll be record data like biggest deer killed, notable pieces of public land and areas that are good, known to produce big deer. And then from there, we get into your pins and just breaking down your pins and, what all of these journals and structures and all, everything. And we're also going to change we're going to use this tile system at the top here that I was calling chips is actually how we're going to display pins in the future. So there'll be like a chip pin for deer. Then you'll click that. Then there'll be a chip pin for for a scrape. Then you'll click that and then it'll show you all the scrapes on the map. And then there'll be a chip for like 2024, 2023, 2022. So if you want to just look at 2021 pins, you'll be able to click that chip inside of here. So it'll be a better way to interact with this data that we're bringing out here pretty soon. The last thing that I won't go super deep into detail here before I get into some of the other features is this Eastman's Tag Hub feature. So Eastman's has this program called Tag Hub, which allows you to research and find out, where you can draw what tags, going into next year. So if you're looking for Rocky Mountain elk and you want to hunt in Montana and you want to do archery and you want good trophy potential and you want at least, 19% of it to be public land, you can actually see why I selected the areas that I did last year. And this is where I was hunting last year. I probably shouldn't be showing that. But you can increase the draw odds, and then you can look at the units that meet your requirements. And this is a pay for additional feature that's not included in our offering that you have to pay extra for. I think it's something like $70 or something like that.
So two things while we're talking about pricing, because there's been several questions about it in the chat. So two things. One, I think, and maybe this is no longer the case, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't there like a very bare bones just property outline landowner free version?
Yeah, so there's a free version where you get an online map like this. So I should start with saying I despise that we pay money for taxpayer generated tiles that the state gets paid your tax money to generate. And then another company comes along and just sends an email, then displays that tax data. So we have a free app that displays all of the property data that hunters can go and use. They don't have to give us a dime, and we don't inundate them with stupid, if you're using HuntStand or Onyx and you want to use their free app, you're going to have to watch a 30-second advertisement every time you want to freaking do something. They're selling your eyeballs. We just do a free app where you can go in and get property line data. You can get SAT1, SAT2, and SAT3, topo. You can get contours at 20 foot. You can get private and public land. That what you can't get is the LIDAR layer. You can't get slope angle. You can't get timber cuts. You can't get agriculture. But if you're just like a 19-year-old kid that wants to go out and hunt, you can drop pins. You can make sure you're not trespassing, and you can go get after it and have basically all of the features that you get from an Onyx or a HuntStand, but you get it for free from us. And that for me is a point of pride, because the mapping services that have been around to this point have been serving commodity data. That's to say it's data that's kind of everywhere. It's like oil. And they're really upcharging it. Like for most of the premier apps, I think one of them's $129 for everything. I think another one's $109. I think another one's $89. We're $59 for the year. And we're all states. So there are ones that are cheaper when you just do one state. We don't have a one state. I've been thinking about doing it because I get asked, but we could do like a one state, or we have a monthly that's like $7 or $8.99. But for $59.99, you get every state, you get all of these features, and you get the UAV, everything I just demoed you, and what I'm about to demo you, you get for that. So yes, there is a free app. And if times are tough and you just want to get out there and put venison on the table for your family and make sure you're not breaking the law, I will not charge you for that. So you can go and do that.
And while we're on the topic, I believe, and this may be updated, but there's going to be a code for Beast members as well, correct? Where that'll make that even more.
I believe it's already active. So if it's not active, it will be active right after this call. But I believe, Mario, I chatted you last week and said that I'd turn that code on. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was code Beast. You have to renew the code at www.spartanforge.ai. You can't do it through the app stores. I repeat, you cannot do it through the app stores. So you got to go to spartanforge.ai. You got to do it there. And if you use that code, I think the app's like $40. So you're getting it for the year at $40.
And that's whole US $40.
Everything,
yeah.
everything that I offer. And then on top of that, you lock yourself in at that price. So if we ever raise the price in the future, you won't pay that raised price. I don't see us raising it anytime soon, but you know, if Amazon decides to jack up the cost of compute and processing and storage, then we're going to have to do that. But, you know, I've got a very small team and I work to keep prices low because, you know, when I was 23, I didn't have $129 to throw at something like this. Certainly in this economy today, with the great leadership that we have in this company, or this country, I'm sorry, Freudian slit, with the great leadership that we have in this country, you know, money is getting short. So I really want people, if anything, just go use the free one and stop paying for stuff that you shouldn't be paying for. Just go use our free one and put meat on the table.
With the code, it's like a third of the price that I was in the past paying for Onyx for a lesser app.
Yeah.
It's a third of the price.
Yeah. And I know one of the
better app.
Yeah, I think it's a better app. I thank you for saying that. One of the things I know we have to improve, and it's not everywhere, some places, like for instance, we've been breaking our heads on waterfowl protection areas. Some of them allow you to hunt whitetails in them, some of them don't. It's not clear in the data. So we're calling around to these places, and there's something like 27,000 of them. So it's taking us some time, whereas my competitors, and I won't say names here, but I happen to know that they just hire a bunch of people from India, and the people from India go and do this. They pay them, you know, next to nothing. It's not that I'm necessarily against that. I'm just trying to employ Americans as much as possible, and keep the team as small as possible and do as much of this in-house as possible without farming out that type of stuff to disinterested people, because I'm trying to save a buck. I am trying to save a buck, but I'm trying to do it in other places, like the way that I generate data and the way that I host data. So I'm trying to make, you know, trying to do as much of this, and I'll tell you that my competition does not. So you know, that to me is important.
Yeah, I'll tell you, that's one of my concerns, because I have on my out-of-state hunts, I will target little small wetlands and stuff that I think are overlooked and stuff. And I've found that a lot of times other apps will say they're open to hunting, and what you'll find out is it's open to hunting under a special permit at a special time or something like that. And you don't know that. You just take it for granted.
Yeah, and we're working hard to get all of that data. And we have researchers, like I said, Kurt Martonic is great, and he's our head researcher, and we're hiring more here pretty soon, that are just going to be calling and doing that. And it takes us time. So people get frustrated with me, like what we just dropped out. You guys know DIY Sportsman Garrett Prawl. He's a dear friend of mine and really a quality dude. He just put out a video, and somebody was like lambasting me about the waterfowl production stuff. And I'm like, look, dude, we're doing it right now. We're doing it with a very small team. We've only been out for 2 years. And I promise you, once we've been around for 12, 14 years, like these other apps, none of these things will be problems. I ask people to look at what we've done in 2 years and then say, is this worth the investment? And do I want to see companies like this grow? And if the answer is yes, then I appreciate your patronage, and I will do everything I can to earn and keep your subscription. And I am the person who interacts with all of our customer service people. You'll see me online in forums responding to stuff. I wake up every morning at 5 a.m. and the first 2 hours of my day is responding to messages online personally and customer service inquiries, and doing all of the interactions with people in your guys' forum and other forums. because it's important to me as I don't even like the term CEO, as the guy who's responsible for the success or failure of this company. The customer, I need direct access to the customer and to understand what their needs are and how we are or not meeting them. And it's not something I'm going to farm out again to some disinterested agent that's just going to report you as a metric and get back to you when it's convenient. You're going to hear from me as long as it's humanly possible.
And Bill, real quick, I know we're going to demo some more features, but there's several questions in the chat, and we'll probably get to some more of those at the end. But one that I know is super important to a lot of people, especially in this day and age, is like a data privacy. So could you speak to that? Obviously, as a hunter, you're putting a lot of what you would like to be private data in trust with your company and your application. What's your policies and how do you handle data privacy?
We don't share data with anyone. We have well over 100,000 emails of people that have tried our app. And I've been approached by no less than 5 to 10. I can tell you the number. Hold on. At least 7 companies have approached me about our email list and selling it. And they've offered us upwards of 50 grand for the email list. I will not sell that email list. Additionally, they want the email list along with what are the pins that you're dropping. I will not sell that email list. I will not sell the pins that you are dropping, because what they want to be able to do is, if Dan Infalt is dropping all, Illinois pins in swamps and they have to do with whitetails, then they know that Bass Pro, they can sell that data to Bass Pro or someone else, and then they can send Dan advertisements on, muckluck boots and rubber boots and cold weather stuff for Illinois, all whitetail centric. And then if he starts dropping pins out in the west part of the US and he's doing like elk stuff, well, then Bass Pro or someone else wants to know that as well. So they sell that data, and then you'll start getting advertisements for that. I don't sell any of that stuff. I'll never sell any of that stuff. The only thing that we will do on the free app side is we have free app sponsors. And when you open the app right now, there's like a splash screen, which it just is there while we load your user data. The only thing that we will do is we will put an advertisement on that splash screen on the free app, so that we're paying for the storage of the free app. They're not getting your data. They're not getting access to your data or your information. You're simply seeing an advertisement on that free app, and it's either that or another static image. So it's not in the app. It's not bogging the app experience down. It's not some video that you need to freaking watch before you get the weather forecast. It's just something that's on the screen for the first 5 seconds you use the app, and then that's it. And then with our free app partners, we'll send out emails every once in a while saying, hey, these are the guys that sponsor your free app. Please support them if you can. But again, we're not giving them your data. We're not sharing that data. And then if you log out of the application or you manage your subscription and you shut it down, you can purge all of your data and we'll never see it. And it gets rid of it. Now, what happens is, and what confuses some people is if you shut down your account and you get out of the app and you purge your data, it's purged from our system, but it's still on your phone. So if you repurchase the application and log back in, it will go to the file where your PIN data is stored, and it will repopulate your PIN data. I had some Yahoo the other day telling me he was going to sue me because he purged his data, and then he went back in, and he was on the free app too, by the way. But then he went back in, and his data was in there, and he was like, "I'm going to sue you," and I'm like, "Go! I mean, you can sue me, dude. I purged your data. Here's the purge receipt. It was purged the day that you asked it to be purged." But you logged in with the same phone and your data was there, so it re-uploaded it. That's the story there. So
you're saying there's just like a local cache file on your phone hard drive, not
on your phone. Yes, exactly, right. Precisely. And I'm not saying data is not important to me. Data integrity is of the utmost importance to me. On the Blue Force chat, we are using AES encryption to make sure that nobody can see that data. Like if you want to plan the American Revolution 2.0, Spartan Forge is going to be a good place to do it, because I won't even be able to see your chat data. Nobody will be able to see your chat data.
I'm familiar, but I imagine a lot of people aren't with encrypted chat. Could you just give us like the 30-second overview of that?
Yeah, so in Blue Force Tracker, when you have a chat associated with each location, there is this It's called 256 AES, and then we're also getting into some more sophisticated ones that are being used in like WhatsApp. Essentially, when we are in this area and we're chatting about this right here, the chat at the bottom of the screen will be encrypted 3 different ways, so that even if Uncle Sam wanted to look at this data, they wouldn't be able to, and I wouldn't be able to provide them access to it. The only way they'd get access to that chat is if they took your phone and you gave them your password. Again, I was in the military. I know what disgruntled government employees are capable of if they're given the proper amount of motivation. And so I'm going to make sure that nobody can get to your stuff on here unless they get a search warrant and they actually physically take your phone.
And that includes employees of the company, correct?
Precisely.
Yeah.
So if there are no more questions, and if there are, please stop me. But if there are no more, I'll get into this new feature that we're coming out with here very soon. The feature is called Cyber Scout. We've been working on it for about 2 years. If you've ever used, and again, Mario has known about this for probably at least the past year, or whenever we started talking about it. I'm pretty excited about it. And essentially what it is, there's 2 scenarios for Cyber Scout, or actually there's more than 2, but the first 2 scenarios that come to mind for me is, I call them kind of like Joe Rogan hunters, but essentially it's somebody who's never been hunting before. They want to go hunting. Maybe they've got some ego, or maybe they don't have anyone in their family who hunts, or they don't know what questions to ask or where to start. Cyber Scout is a large language model that we've built internally that can be asked any question about the outdoors experience. You can also ask it about the Constitution, or you can ask it about trapping. You can ask it about setting up your bow. You can ask it about how to scout a swamp. You can ask it, hey, I normally hunt out west, I normally hunt out east. I have an expandable broadhead bow and arrow setup with a 400 grain arrow, and now I want to go hunt mountain goat. How should I change my setup? It's very good at answering all of those types of questions. And if you were to use like a Google Bard or Twitter's AI or Chat GPT or Snapchat, if you were to ask them these questions, you would get like a D+ or a C- answer. But when you're using Cyber Scout, you're going to get B+ to A- answers every time. And people like Garrett, like Kurt, like myself, like other people. It's also very good with firearms. Any questions that you have about how many grains you should be shooting, what kind of bullets you should be shooting, what your setup should look like. It's also trained on all kinds of really esoteric military manuals that I keep that I find very useful. If you guys can see me, like survival manuals and stuff like that are really hard to get a hold of that I've had since I was in the military. Like this one's dated 1968. I don't know if you can see that or not. There's a lot of really useful stuff in here. And I have goals to expand this, but I'm starting it here in the app. So I'll just ask it a first question. I would encourage the 3 of you or any of your users. In fact, it would be great if the users could think up some questions. I'm going to ask, what's going to change is, before we release this, is Cyber Scout, this little green guy here, is going to move down over here to the left side. And the display will get a little larger. So the first people that I built this for, I should finish this before I start, is people that just want to know more or get like an alternate course of action or an alternate thought pattern to think about a situation or a particular hunting area. And that it's for them. But then the person that I really think of when I've built this thing is, the 22-year-old kid that, doesn't have anyone in his family who's hunted. He's maybe got a single mom at home, or he's 16 and he wants to get into hunting. He doesn't know where to start. The bow shop is maybe intimidating, but he's got that, that spark in him, and he wants to go out and learn how to hunt. Like he can start here. So maybe he lives in Southwest Minnesota and he says, I want to hunt white-tailed deer. Can you help me? So it's a little slow right now because of the amount of resources that we put towards this right now, but we'll scale it whenever we release it. So it might take, 20 or seconds or so, something like that, to get the answer here. So it says, you bet I can help you. Chasing those whitetails is a dance. I'm here to teach you the steps. But first, where in the stars and stripes are you aiming to hunt? What is your weapon of choice? And describe the battlefield. So I'm going to say, I am hunting in southwest Minnesota with a bow, and I am looking at killing bucks in swamp country. So again, I encourage everyone to think about questions and put them in the chat, please, because I'd love to get some really crazy ones. And I'll show you how powerful this thing is. Like, I'm being kind of asking really simple questions right now. This thing is an expert, and it's a true expert. And if you were to compare it with any other AI out there, you would see how much more of an expert it is. So it says, Roger that. Bow hunting for bucks in the swamplands of Minnesota is a true art form. It requires stealth, patience, and the right intel. Let's chart the course. Elevation is king. Even in swamp country, a few inches of elevation can make an island paradise for a buck. Look for topographic anomalies. These high points often mean dry ground for bedding. Patches and points. The trees or brush are slightly higher ground, the prime real estate. Deer love these spots for security and comfort. The area might not look like much, but to a swamp buck, it's a castle. Travel routes. Deer will use path of least resistance. Use your Spartan Forge app's high-resolution imagery to identify deer trails that connect feeding and bedding areas. Edges and ecotones. Transition areas between swamp and solid land are like deer version of a highway or a rest stop. Look for areas where two types of habitat meet. Deer often travel these edges. Historical wind knowledge. Knowing your winds is like having a cheat code. Use the historical wind data, what we just showed before, in the Spartan Forge app to your advantage. When setting up your ambush, quiet entry and exit, be as silent as a shadow, use the cover of the swamp, and navigate to your stand without sounding like a marching band. Sand placement. Downwind of trails leading to bedding and food sources. Height might be limited in swampy areas, so get creative. Stay mobile. If your first setup isn't hitting the mark, don't be afraid to move. Adaptability is key in swamp country. Remember, with swamp hunting, it's about navigating water and finding pockets of deer paradise that are hidden within. It can be tough waiting, but the rewards, oh buddy, the rewards are as sweet as the apple pie on Sunday afternoon. And remember this nugget of wisdom. You're a free American doing what free Americans do best. You pursue happiness. And in this case, that happiness has 4 legs instead of antlers. So get out there, feel the freedom, and hunt smart. So I can do like something really esoteric that most people won't know. I can say, I want to build a new M4. I served in the special operations community, and I want the rifle to resemble a SOP Mod 2 build. How do I do that?
Well, there goes your AWS access, Bill.
I know. That's why I'm building my own trailers to store this. I'm doing it right now. We've purchased 3 down in Florida. I'm quite serious. This type of stuff is going to make all of the Karens upset. All of this data is on the internet. All I've done is told these chat models, which have been around since the 70s, the algorithms that run them, the data that's good and the data that's bad. So that is what has taken us all of this time. We've done something like 50,000 documents between 5 and 10 pages each that educate this model on only high quality data. So it's not like a general language model. So here's the answer. Well, as a fellow patron of freedom and of the Second Amendment, let's talk about decking out your M4 in true SOP Mod Block 2 style. It's like giving your trusty steed the royal treatment. Here's a rundown. The basics. Your upper receiver. Start with a high-quality flat-top upper receiver. It's the foundation on which the throne of freedom is built. Guts and glory. Barrel. A 14 to 16-inch barrel is the SOP Mod standard. Opt for a cold hammer forged of mixed accuracy and durability. Forefront. Rail system. The heart of the SOP Mod 2 is the rail system. So this is genius. It knows exactly what it's talking about. Go for a free-floating RIS-2 or an FDE. It gives you all the whistles and bells that your heart desires. Optics, PEQ 15. I mean, I could go on all day. I don't want to sit here and read and waste people's time, but it goes through everything. even from your magazines to your backup sights to your grip and grim. It says a vertical grip. I'm more of a triangle grip guy for ergonomics, but I mean, it's all there and it's all correct.
Yeah,
So
and I think the point is that the language model is, or in this case, it's not a language model, but it's trained on real documents that you or your
it is a
team.
language model. You were correct. It is a large language model, and we use other large language algorithms that are publicly available out there. The difference is that the quality of data I've curated personally with my research team, and there's no BS in here. You're not going to get any liberal crap. You're not going to get like, you know, you'll see it when you use it. This thing is oriented towards individual autonomy and freedom and educating people with quality information that will make them productive when they get out there and scout. So if there are any questions that have been put in the chat, or if any Mario or Dan or anyone have any, I'm happy to run it through.
Yeah, I'll scan the chat, but in the meantime, we'll go. Been going to Mario first, so let's go to Dan. Dan, you have any follow up right now?
I'm just observing and
We
learning.
have to think of a creative question to ask the Cyber Scout hunter here. I mean, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say I could ask it something like,
what if?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Let's see. No, I've stumped myself. What if I wanted to hunt? What direction should I enter the woods if I'm hunting the downwind side of bedding? Let's see what it gives for that.
What direction should I enter the woods from if what?
I'm hunting the downwind side of bedding, and the bedding is to my east.
Well, that's the thing, and we do have questions in the chat, so Bill, we can hit a few of those. I think you mentioned it earlier, and I'm not sure if this viewer was on, but someone asked, do a backflip. That's the user's name. Where did you get your startup money?
Friends and family were my first investors. I'm in the middle of doing a round right now for a larger one, but just to let everyone know, I'll never do like a deal with any crappy people. No anti-2A people, or no, the Chinese or Indians or anything like that. All Western. Only Western, U.S. or U.S. Canadian based organizations that don't have long-standing hatred for the U.S. consumer or the individual patriot.
That's pretty good. It actually said in there.
It says, I'll read it for people listening or who can't see it. All right, Ace, let's talk strategy. The wind is your secret messenger of the woods. It can carry tales of your approach or keep your secret safe. If you're hunting the downwind side of bedding, that bedding is to your east. Plan your attack should look something like this. Wind check. First, determine the direction of the prevailing wind or most frequent winds using your Spartan Forge app's historical wind data. Approach planning. You'll want to enter the woods from the west or northwest if the wind is blowing from the east or the west, or from the bedding towards you. This can keep your scent blowing away from the deer and their keen noses. When the wind is whispering your intentions, you have to gently whisper back, not today. Stay downwind, move with the stealth of a cat, and the bucks won't know you're in there until you're the last thing they'll ever see. Freedom, wind, and stealth. That's the trifecta. Now go forth, consider the wisdom of the wind, and may your hunt be as bountiful as the land.
We got a mostly softball question here for you, Bill. How did you come up with the company name?
Oh, so Spartan Forge. I just think of hunting as hunters as wanting to be like we never want to take too much in the woods, never put too much on our back. We never want to, and in the military, we are always studying military history. And the Spartans were a military fighting force that I admired greatly based on stuff that they did like in Thermopylae, what they did on the plains of Plataea and other places. And essentially they were about bringing as much, they're economizing their force as much as possible and killing as many bad guys as possible while carrying the least amount of things. So Spartan Forge is like where the Spartans go to get their tools, the forge at which the Spartan tools are built. So kind of cheesy, but that's what it is.
I've got another question here, and I think you might have mentioned this, but we'll reiterate it in case we missed it. how long for complete UAV and LIDAR? The person asking wants to know Kentucky specifically, but if you could maybe talk Kentucky and or whole U.S.
Well, we use user concentration. So where people are dropping the majority of their data, like their data that we're getting readouts from. Again, we're not looking at exactly where they are, but we can say like, hey, in this county, we've got so many users. We try to go off of those population centers. It's going to, like I said before, it would be $50 million to cover 30 to 50 million or so to cover every square inch of the U.S. So it's going to be a while. But like I said before, the 1 meter data, or like this data right here.
Yeah, there's already, what did you say, 70% coverage or 73% coverage?
No. Like this data right here will be 100% coverage.
Okay.
It is 100% coverage, and there'll be 10 years of historical. It's just not going to be the UAV stuff, which is 15 centimeter. It's going to be the 1 meter data, which is like you can see the baseball bat on the ground.
Maybe
but it'll have 10 years of historical.
Misremembering. Was it LIDAR? One of them I thought you said had 73%.
LIDAR will be 2025, 100% coverage. But the other thing people are going to be able to do very soon, in fact, we're doing it for TAC, is you'll be able to pay someone like $200 to fly a drone over wherever you want. You'll be able to drop it right into the app.
Oh, nice.
So if you have a farm or a large piece of public, you can pay these drone operators. They'll go out and fly it for you. They'll provide you with a geotiff, and that geotiff can be dropped into your app, and you'll be the only one who can see it. You'll also be able to, at some point over the summer here, be able to drop in arbitrary imagery. So if there's another mapping application or somebody draws you a map or something like that that's got better imagery, you'll be able to drop that in and have that just for your app.
User ask, Pharrell, does the free one work on all phones? And I'm going to expand on this question. Is there any operating system or phone limitations on free or paid apps currently?
Yeah, it works on all platforms. The worst platforms are just the worst phones, Google Pixel, and just as a buggy phone overall. Most of my issues come with like Google Pixel phones. The best phones, the most stable phone would be your flagship Samsungs, like your S21, S22, S23, or S24, or with the Apple, any Apple in the last 3 years is going to be good as well.
Yeah, and I think this is the case. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not an expert in this field, but the phone's hardware components itself, so like the hard drive and the phone's RAM, are going to contribute to the smoothness or not of the app operation, correct?
Yeah, same with your GPS. Like if you've got an older phone, most times people are like, oh, the GPS doesn't work great. That's because they have battery saver turned on, which limits the amount of times that the GPS can be sampled. So check that first. And if it's still not good, it's likely your phone. We sample the GPS quite often, and it's quite accurate as long as the phone allows it to be.
Another question, more on the weather data. Where does the data come from? So your data source, and is it the nearest weather station, or is it like a triangulation of the nearest weather station?
We use multiple weather services, and it would be kind of proprietary to say which ones we use, but we do look for where the most accuracy is, and that's generally the first data that you're served up. But there are 3 weather sources. One of them is the same one that all of our competitors use, but there's a couple of other ones in there that our competitors don't use. And if it's more accurate historically, then that's what you'll get served up with. It's actually one of the biggest praises I get from people is that the weather data and the wind direction is super accurate. It's the most common, I would say, of the praise that we get.
Out of Control Motorsports said, just paid and downloaded. Thanks for all the hard work.
Well, I really appreciate that. And if there are any questions, they can hit me directly up on Instagram or Facebook, and they'll be dealing directly with me.
We got a funny one here. Earlier, you mentioned your wife worked for the FBI. So meet me at the creek says, great technology, but right off the bat, the feds are involved, and some laughing emojis. So I think that was mostly a joke. But
yeah. I mean, whether like not we like it, the feds are always involved. So
here's a good one. Robert Deere asks, can you transfer tracking routes? So is that a file type like a waypoint that will be able to be transferred?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe it's only from OnX, though, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think the other ones do it. And we're also I would say that's the ugliest part of our app right now is our tracking, how it looks when you track. greatly improving that over the next couple of months here. Really, by the time August comes, this app is going to, I think, be the prettiest thing out there. And if we do a future podcast, I'm happy to show you guys what it's going to look like. I mean, we've got some really cool stuff coming that I think is really going to knock people's socks off from a UI UX standpoint.
And I wasn't trying to sandbag on the app earlier when I was talking about when I looked at it initially, but I was genuinely impressed and shocked with the progress to date. So, and I know a lot of the guys on the team that you've mentioned. So I'm expecting, expectations are high.
Thank you. I hope I meet them.
We got another one. Tinger shows the Spartan Forge app downloaded. Very impressive, Bill.
Thank you. And again, if they have any issues or questions, DIY Sportsman Garrett Prawl just put out a 2024 video on using the application. I encourage everyone to go and watch that. There's lots of little things on the mobile app. Like if you double tap the compass, you'll drop a quick pin. We're going to have an update here in a few months where if you triple click the compass, it will drop a quick pin and take a picture at the same time. So it's just like ways to cut down time in the woods. There's a bunch of little Easter eggs like that where if you watched Garrett's video, little cool things that we throw in there. Yeah, if there aren't Cyber Scout questions, I can stop sharing and just, I can't see who I'm talking to, so it's kind of awkward.
Oh, sure. No, go ahead and stop sharing.
I guess there's one other thing I'll show you on this Cyber Scout that I think is really worth talking about. And I'll just say, again, we're going to do a video series. We're going to do a post here very soon where we're going to be looking for a young guy, 25, 18 to 25, who's never hunted but really wants to hunt. We got to look for the right person, and he's going to learn from Cyber Scout, and then go out and hopefully put some meat on the table for his family. So we'll be dropping that post pretty soon. But you could say something along the lines of like, I normally hunt whitetail with a arrow that weighs 400 grams with a expandable broadhead for deer, but I am going to hunt goats in Alaska. How should I change my setup? And I'll also say, and what is FOC? Just, trying to give this thing multiple pieces of information. And then again, it's for learning. That's the major. I should say this is the first release, and a thing I forgot to mention, I'll mention it right after we get off here, or right after I see this. There's two updates coming with Cyber Scout very soon that I think people will find very, very useful. And just don't let me forget that before we get off here, because the second and third up to date to Cyber Scout is, I think, even more impressive than what we're doing here on the first one, which I think is huge. There's a lot going on and a lot of things that we're doing here. So I'm trying to fill my time and talk while this thing is coming up with the answer.
Sure. No, a couple more comments. A lot of people are very excited about the split screen feature in the desktop.
Awesome. Yes. And also doing it will be, like I said, we'll be doing it in the mobile app here soon too. It'll be more useful on your larger phones. But it is what it is.
And then there's several comments about how high quality the UAV imagery was also.
Yes. Great. Thank you. And like I said, it's 50% coverage on that. Alaska goats. That's some rugged, tough hunting. Quite the setup from the whitetail woods. You're going to need an arrow that's up to the task, since you're dealing with steeper angles and potentially longer shots in the wild and mountainous terrain. Here's what you need. Arrow weight, up the ante. Go for an heavier arrow, something on the range of 450 to 500 grains or more. You need that extra oomph for penetration on the tough mountain critters, especially those thick hides and potential bone contact. Broadhead, swap the expandables for fixed blade broadheads. You want reliability and bone crunching power, and the fixed blades offer that in spades. Look for a cut-on contact designed for maximum penetration. Spine, make sure your arrows have the right spine for increased weight. Heavier arrows with more spine might require stiffer spine to maintain that accuracy. FOC means front of center, and it means the balance point of your arrow. It's a percentage of your arrow's total weight that is located in the front half of your arrow. A higher FOC means the weight is towards the tip of the arrow, which can improve accuracy penetration, essentially where you're aiming on those tough Alaskan goats. Calculating FOC. Measure the length of the arrow from the base of the knot groove to the end of the arrow shaft minus the broadhead. Find the arrow's balance point by balancing on an arrow edge and measuring to the base of the nock. Use this formula, FOC percentage divided by frac balance point minus arrow times 2. You can also put these measurements in and it will convert the FOC for you. Ideal FOC is 10 to 15%. If you're below this, consider adding weight to the front end. With these adjustments, you'll have a rig that's Alaska goat ready. Remember, you're not just flinging arrows. You're delivering freedom points, prairie thunderbolts. So suit up, hike out, and pursue the goats like a grit of a pioneer with precision spec ops marksmanship. So I will stop sharing, and I'll just from there. Oops. The first thing I should say next is it has all of our Western draw data in there. So if you want to just do a question and answer and say, hey, I want to hunt out west, how do I do that? It can do that. It also has all of the hunting regulations uploaded to it. So, and those are all curated. So if you're going to go hunt a place you've never been before and you're like, hey, what are some of the weird regulations in this area? Or how much orange do I need for rifle season? Or what is the minimum caliber of the bullet I need to use for this type of animal? It will know all of those questions. The second update, which we hope to do before hunting season, you'll be able to take pictures of types of plants and it will tell you the type of plant and whether or not deer or whatever your quarry is that you're hunting, whether or not they eat it and when they eat it. We've been putting that data together for quite a while. And again, it's for learning. And then shortly after that, you'll be able to upload deer and it will catalog deer and build journal entries for you. And that will eventually turn into integration with trail cameras. So all very exciting for us. And then the final update, which will probably be at the end of the year, going into next year, will be basically like, where should I scout in this area and why? It will give you some recommendations on actual places on the map and what to look for and what you should be doing. Again, not to replace scouting, not to take the art out of scouting. It is there for people who don't have, like, I can text a Mario anytime. I would say now Dan texted me tonight, so now I'm going to be bothering him with questions all the time. So I'm just joking. I won't do that to you, Dan. But why should I have that kind of access and why should someone else not? And if I can provide them that access for a minimum amount of money so they can go out and learn and become independent on their own. I get a lot of people who will message me and say like AI shouldn't be in hunting and we should get out of AI in hunting. And it's like, well, there's a couple of things. AI is here. If I don't do it first, then some unethical actor will do it first. And we're going to have an AI in hunting that we don't want. I promise you this will be an ethical actor. And it's not siphoning your information. It's not listening to you. It's not doing any of that bull stuff. It is here to help you and to make you a better hunter. And it's not to replace any of those things. So it's an education resource. And you can easily not use it if you don't want to use it. But also, if you want to learn about something you didn't know about, like ballistic coefficients, it can tell you more about ballistic coefficients than I ever learned in 21 years of being a military officer. It's an aid. It's a helper. And it will allow that kid who's maybe 20 years old living with a single mom in the south side of Chicago to go out and put some venison on the table for her. Maybe he goes and gets a doe. And now she doesn't have to worry about putting meat in the freezer, and they can spend some money somewhere else. That is my dream. That is my pursuit as an individual and as an American, to make sure that people that want to do that, who maybe don't have the money or the resources or the internet to go online and do that, or to reach out to a Dan Infalt or whatever, that they can go and do that and learn in a way that kids are learning today. And so I think it's good. I think it's a good thing.
Before we get into the rest of the Q&A, Bill, I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for the demo too. There's like I said, I've been getting familiar, but you showed several things that I wasn't aware of and got a lot of good feedback about the app in the chat. So I think there's a lot of people that are more excited to check out your application and your company now.
Well, I really thank you guys for having me on. Dan and Mario, you guys, I learned from you since the very beginning. So if anyone doesn't like what I'm doing, you can actually blame these two gentlemen that are on here. So
I would comment too. I mean, the app is very feature rich, but if you're just starting to use it and you want to get into understanding it. I mean, I highly recommend when you're out scouting, like flipping back and forth between your scouting and hitting that intel, and flipping back and forth between mapping and the intel. It's very valuable to start connecting all that information that's in there between historical wind, sunrise, sunset, the moon phase, and the different travel patterns that are for that area. So it was interesting when Bill and I were talking during the year, when we're like troubleshooting one spot that I was in on some mapping stuff, and he's like, "Oh, well, it looks like the deer are going to be moving in full range in that area that you're going to be in tonight or whatever." So, I mean, some of that stuff, it's pretty cool to start looking back and forth. And on the topic of AI, I think what people have to realize too is it's incredibly powerful just to summarize data. Even you yourself as a hunter, if you're a journaler and you take in a lot of information with journaling, I mean, you could go grab a lot of that data that you collect yourself, and if you had a little bit of coding background, you could push that into your own language model and summarize it and have it talk back to you and tell you all of your historical data. Essentially, that is what the tool is doing, is providing that ability, but providing it in an app that everyone could gain access to and utilize. So it's pretty powerful, and it's a way that you can educate and teach people more efficiently.
Yes, thank you. That's great. Thank you.
Dan, you got anything before we move on to the questions here?
I just want to thank Bill for putting this app together and for all his work into this, and for looking out for hunters.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
We got a question here from, where'd it go? Another Ashley Outdoor says, do you think the limited use of trail cameras, I think she means from like a regulatory standpoint, some states are banning them, will that impact any of the options you have in the app? So I think the question is, are you gathering any of your data from trail camera sources? And if trail cameras go away, will that impact the app?
So the base of the network is built all on collar GPS data. And that collar GPS data, we have it from North Dakota, we have Minnesota, we have Ohio, we have Pennsylvania, we have Vermont, we have Maine, we have South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, Texas, Mississippi, and Alabama. And if you were to add all of the data up, it's something like 2,200 years of data. So if a doe wears a collar for 3 days or 3 years, that's 3 years of hunting data. If 2 does wear one for 3 years, that's 6 years. We've got something like 2,000 years. That informs most of the model. In the future, if people want the model to be informed by their deer cameras, they can. And again, that's just another point of contact for them. But I don't see, at least from my perspective, the app being affected hugely by whether or not there are cameras readily available. I don't get into the process of telling people. I understand why some people do. I don't care if people never want to use trail cameras or if they want to. Like, that to me is a value judgment, and it doesn't affect me one way or the other. Because there are a lot of people really getting up in arms about people using trail cameras these days. My goal is, first, I kill does to feed my family, and then I'm chasing antlers. I don't care how you put food on the table or what tools you use. I've got some pretty hot takes on what should, I think, be legalized for hunters and what shouldn't be. So it's probably the wrong place to say it, but.
We've got a question from Black Warrior. Are the laptop and mobile apps separate subscriptions?
Nope, same one. And same with the free. Even if you use the free one, you're going to get a desktop app.
What about availability in Canada?
We're working on it. Last year we tried doing it, and it was just a ton of red tape. We only have 12 people on our team total. Just to give you some context, my number one competitor's research staff is like 70 people. And their development staff, I think, is like something like 40. I'm doing everything with 12 guys. So we'll get there.
Okay. And sorry, that was from Tim Crane. I usually like to ask or mention that asker's name there. Let's see what else we got here. We had a couple more. Pharrell asks, can it predict animals moving from traditional areas to new areas? Maybe perhaps like wolves being introduced or cougars moving east.
Not now, but you can ask the model about those. You can ask Cyber Scout about that, and it can provide you trends, but it's not going to do it for individual animals.
Okay, and then this question is specific to Cyber Scout. It says, how well would that work in areas where whitetails have larger shifts, for example, up north, and I'm assuming like yarding behavior and things like that?
Yeah, it's got all of that data. It's got it. Most peer-reviewed scientific studies that have been done in the last 80 years have been curated and fed to Cyber Scout.
Yeah, and just to elaborate on that, those studies are from all over the U.S., correct?
Oh yeah, U.S.,
Yeah,
Canada, Western Europe, roe deer, red deer, moose, every type of ungulate. It's all. I love deer, so if people hear this and it might be overwhelming to them, I'm never not thinking about those animals, and it's all I do. So it's all I've been doing for the past few years of my life, and it's an itch it's a scratch I've never been able to itch.
And this is just my own observation. People can take it for whatever they want, but some of the guys, like you said, pro staff maybe is not the great word, but the people that you mentioned that are on the staff, I know Andy May's been pretty well involved, Garrett Prawl. For people that are beasts, these are names that you've seen around the beast for 10, 15 years, guys that hunt like we do. And to me, again, looking at the updates that I just looked at over the last couple of weeks, you can tell that there's been some really valuable input from people that hunt like hunting beast hunt.
Yeah, absolutely. I pride myself on the people that I associate myself with and the hunters that we have on board. I think they're the best in the community. There's only a few other ones that I would try to get on here. And, obviously I've been learning from you guys since, Moses was in short pants. So there's not many other people that I would want to get. This pro staff is almost pro staff. I hate that term. This group of guys that I trust and want talking about my product. It's almost where it needs to be at. Like, we're very close. There's a few more people, and otherwise, this is never going to be something where, some girl in a tight shirt is saying how she got this, done on a huge ranch in Texas for $81,000. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. All I'm saying is the data here is the people that we surround ourselves with. It's us. We are hunters, and we're all accessible. I am very accessible. Everyone I deal with is very accessible, and that's really where we need to get back to, is making this more of a brotherhood and less of a caste system, where people are having access and doing things on properties. Andy, Garrett, Johnny, you guys know all of those guys. You guys, these are all people that hunt public lands and pride themselves on being able to be dropped anywhere and put it together in a very short amount of time. And that is who we are associated with, and that's who we'll always be working with. People like, we also work with other guys like the Seek One guys. They knock on doors. That's available for anyone to do. Anyone can go and knock on a door and seek access. So that's kind of what we're trying to do here, because I see that as the best way of embodying and distilling useful information and then making it available to the masses.
Yeah, and the app to me kind of reflects that. Like I said, and you said yourself, going to a bunch of different resources. The app centralizes all your favorite features from a lot of those different resources and one platform. So we'll do one more here. Brian M. will end on a fun one. Can it predict a Bigfoot's location?
No, but we do have Bigfoot, Yeti, and Tactisquatch pins. So if you see them, you can drop those pins in the app, and please let me know. I was just
you had that on your map that you were showing. So I was
right. So I mean, yes. So maybe I gave away a little bit too much there. I will say also, if anyone had questions that didn't get them answered, just hit me up on Instagram and I'll answer your question if you had other questions that didn't get answered. We also will be doing kind of also, one of the things we're going to be doing is a custom pin tool. So you'll be able to build your own pins. So if there is a Yeti, a purple Yeti pin that you want made, you'll be able to do that yourself here pretty soon.
Well, that's awesome. Hey, Bill, I want to thank you one more time. We'll go around the horn and we'll start with you. Bill, any last words?
If you hate the app, you're my best source of learning. So please reach out on Instagram and let me know what you hate about the app so that I can help you, or I can fix it, or whatever, or I can get you off the app. Any way it is, I'm building this for us. So hit me up on Instagram or on Facebook, follow us, download the free app. If you want to get the paid app, you can do that too. We are also donating to like all of the apps that I've been doing here. We're going to be doing a percentage of it and writing a check to the Colorado Wildlife Responsible Management Initiative that people have been hearing about. There's people trying to limit hunting out in Colorado right now. And I think that is a slippery slope. And I think it's on us as sportsmen to make sure that this access stays open for us to be able to hunt any type of quarry we want. So that's pretty important to me right now. So if anybody has any questions, anything, hit me up there. And I'm excited to release these features throughout the year. And I'm just, blessed to be doing what I love every day. And I can't thank you all enough for listening to me jaw jack for the last couple hours.
Dan?
Sounds good.
Yeah. Just great app. Really love what you're doing. For everybody listening, just a reminder that you can use code BEAST and get 30% off, which, it's a third of the price of other apps that aren't as good.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Mario?
Yeah, just thanks for coming on, Bill. I appreciate it. And, I look forward to this relationship together and more. We're going to be doing more promotions and more stuff in the future as it gets closer to the season. So, yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.